Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about scheduled charging time versus departure charging time, so if you're interested, stay tuned. So maybe you clicked on this video because you have no idea what the difference is, or maybe you want to know which one is better. So I'm going to explain both. So first, let's go over the basics. What scheduled charging time is basically, you come home from work, let's say 5, 6 o'clock, whatever, you plug in your car, and what it does is it delays the charge time, so you can set scheduled charging time to whenever you want. So example would be, let's say you get home from work at 6 o'clock, like I said, and then you want to start charging at 11 p.m. or something, whenever your time of use rate gives you the best rate to charge. So basically what you would do is you'd come home, you'd plug in your car, when you get home, and then basically the car will just start charging at 11 p.m. or whatever time you set it at. So that's scheduled charging. So obviously this feature is going to be definitely the most useful for home charging because, you have your time of use rate where it's going to be cheaper to charge overnight. One other thing I do want to mention is that when you set scheduled charging, it does remember the location. So basically if you set scheduled charging at home, it'll remember it every time you plug in at home, but let's say you go out to the grocery store or something and there's free public charging. If you plug in at that free public charger, it'll immediately start charging. So the other feature is departure charging time. And so basically this is a newer feature that was released last November on 2019.36.2.1. And basically what it does is it's almost kind of the reverse of scheduled charging, where basically if you set departure time, it'll charge up until whatever time you set. So let's say you set it at 7 a.m. in the morning, it'll charge until 7 a.m. And then stop at that time. So the reason this feature was introduced is because doing scheduled charging time sometimes would impact the time of use rate for some people. Depending on your utility company, some utility companies only give you like a smaller window of time to get the best rate. And so departure time was supposed to negate that so you could get your charging at the best rate possible. So what departure time does is it works backwards. So let's say that you set your departure time for 7 a.m. It'll basically calculate how much charge you need, and it'll calculate basically, so let's say you need like 2 hours, it'll start at 5 a.m. and then end at 7 a.m. Just, whatever time you set as departure time. So which is better? Well, that really depends on you and your utility company's time of use rate. So for me personally, I'm not a good example because basically I have PG&E and their time of use rate is basically all overnight. So it's like set 11 p.m. until like 7 a.m. So basically I could charge my entire battery during that time if I needed to. But normally I don't need to charge that much. So if I were to charge a couple hours, I could set it whatever time I want and it doesn't really matter because I'm going to get the same rate. So I think one of the big factors on why departure time was introduced is because of that time of use rate and if there's a limited overnight, charging time. So maybe you only have like 4 or 5 hours of charging time overnight. This is when departure time would come in handy because then you can set it, right when it ends and then it'll work backwards from there. So this feature would be really useful if, say, your time of use rate ends at like 4 a.m. in the morning. Obviously, you don't want to get up at 4 a.m. to go unplug your car. Same thing, you'd have to wake up and use your app to turn it off. So basically, if you use departure time, it'll shut off at 4 a.m. and you don't have to get up to do it yourself. Do keep in mind, though, that basically, for example, let's say you only have like a 2-hour window of good time of use rate. If you need more time than that, so say maybe you need 4 hours of charge and you use departure time, you're going to have to work backwards and set your battery like percentage, whatever you want to charge at, lower. That way you can time it so you only get that 2-hour window of charging. That way you don't get overcharged the extra 2 hours for, at the higher rate. So keep that in mind. So I think what would be a really nice next step is we have scheduled time where you can start it whenever you want. Now we have departure time when you can end it whenever you want. Well, maybe in the next, iteration of the software or sometime down the line, maybe we can have a feature where basically we can set how long we want to charge. So maybe we want to charge 2 hours only or 3 hours, something like that where you can actually control the start and end time, not just control one side. I'm going to speculate that one of the reasons why we don't have a set start time and set end time is because most utility companies aren't going to give you a 2-hour window. It's going to be a way larger window. Usually it's overnight, so probably 8-9 hours of best use rate. So you can, schedule the start time or the end time, and it shouldn't impact your best pricing for your charge. Another reason departure time was introduced, and I think this is probably the bigger one, is for people that live in cold climates. So where it snows and things like that, you obviously don't want to get in your car when it's absolutely frozen in the morning because one, you're going to have a cold soaked battery. It's going to perform super crappy. And so basically departure time is made up for that. So, you set it, hey, I'm leaving for work at 7 a.m. End the charge at 7 a.m. That way when you get in your car, your battery won't be soaked. You'll be able to use cold soaked. You will be able to use regen braking as well, which is really nice. And of course you can preheat the cabin as well. So it's nice and toasty when you get in instead of, all the opposite stuff where it's frozen and just not fun at all. So before departure time was introduced, you basically have to manually do this yourself by backing into it. So you'd have to figure out how much charge you needed based on, your charging, your amps and voltage at your house. And then basically like setting your schedule time forward so that way it'll end when you want it to end. And then on top of that, you wouldn't be able to precondition the car doing that. So you'd have to probably manually do that in the morning when you got up, and it might not quite be ready when you got into the car. So if you don't live where it's cold, I guess departure time's not really a big deal. So that's basically like me here in the Bay Area. It doesn't really get cold, so I don't have to worry about my, battery getting cold soaked. I also get to park in a garage, which is kind of nice. So basically I just use scheduled charging, set it at some overnight time, let it go, and then basically when I wake up in the morning, I have a full battery and be ready to go for work. So now that you know the differences between scheduled charging time and departure charging time, which one do you think works best for you and why? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.